So I'm going to show you a much quicker way to do polynomial division. So we've talked about how to do long division, but we're going to use something called synthetic division, which is a really nice shortcut. It's actually all of the work of long division without having to write everything and rewrite everything and write x squared and x cubed and all that stuff. You just have to write numbers. First thing we got to talk about though is that this only works when dividing by what we're going to call linear binomials, which sounds really scary. But all we're saying is, so this will work. This will work when dividing by things like x minus 3. This is called a linear binomial. So we've got just an x term to the first power, and then we've got a constant going with it. It'll work for x plus 1. It would technically work for half x minus 2, although it would be a little complicated, but it would work for that. This will not work. Will not work when dividing by if you had something like x squared plus 3. This is a quadratic binomial. It's got an x squared term. It doesn't have just an x term there. So like an x to the first power. So you can't use it for that. If you tried like x not x squared, x cubed minus 7, that would not work. If you tried to divide by x squared plus 2x plus 1, that is a trinomial, quadratic. It would not work. Okay, so this will only work when you're trying to divide by simple things like this. Okay, all right, so let's look at an example. I'm going to scroll down, actually. Okay. So our first example is we're going to take x squared plus 4x minus 32, and we're going to divide that by x plus 8. And so what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually write down the coefficients that go in front of the numbers that go in front of the variables. So there's a 1 in front of that x squared. There's a 4 in front of the x, and then we have negative 32. So we're going to say 1, 4, and negative 32. So we've got those. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to the x plus 8. If we're dividing by x plus 8, that means that x plus 8 is going to be a factor of this polynomial, which means if we took x plus 8 and set it equal to 0, much like when we were solving by factoring, we would be able to figure out what x is. So x in this case would be negative 8. So you could just subtract 8 from both sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the negative 8 over here in a little box. And what we're going to do next is really cool. So we're going to bring the 1 down. Always bring that leftmost number down. And then you're going to take your number up in the box here, negative 8, and multiply it by 1, and you're going to put the result right here. So you're going to do negative 8. And then you're going to take these two numbers and you're going to add them down. So we always say we multiply up and then we add down. So 4 plus negative 8 is negative 4. And then you've got negative 8 times negative 4. You'll write that up here. That's going to be positive 32. And then we will add down. So negative 32 plus positive 32 is 0. And so the way this works then is that this string of numbers here is actually the solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to write that this 0 here, this is always the remainder term. So the furthest number to the right is always the remainder term. And it's nice that we have a remainder of 0 here, which means it divides nicely and evenly. This next term is the constant term. This next term is the x term. The next term after that would be the x squared term, the x cubed term, the x to the fourth term, so on and so forth. We don't have any of those, but I'm just telling you because you will have those later. So our answer then here, when we write this out, is we're going to say that x squared plus 4x minus 32 divided by x plus 8 is 1x minus 4 with a remainder of 0. So I'm not going to bother putting in the remainder there. But it's going to be 1x minus 4. So that would be your answer. And what's really nice on these is that you can check these by just multiplying what you were, the original thing you were dividing by in the answer, and you should get the original polynomial there. So let's just double check that real quick. If we do x plus 8 and x minus 4, those should both be factors of x squared plus 4x minus 32. So the question is, are these things actually equal? I'm just going to put a question mark there. And let's multiply this out. So x times x times negative 4, 8 times x, and 8 times negative 4. What would that give us? The red would give us x squared. The yellow would give us minus 4x. The green would give us plus 8x. And the blue would give us minus 32. So that would be altogether, that would be x squared plus 4x minus 32. And look at that. That is exactly what it should be. So that means that we did our division correctly, and that x minus 4 is indeed the answer when you divide that trinomial by x plus 8. All right, let's look at another example here. So we've got x cubed plus 5x squared minus 18, and we're dividing by x plus 3. First step is to write down the coefficients, which are going to be 1, 5, and negative 18. But be very careful here. Notice how there's no x term. What we're going to do is we're actually going to include the x term. So there's 1x cubed, there's 5x squared, there's 0 x's, and then minus 18. This 0 is incredibly important. If you don't include it, the synthetic division won't work. All right, so now that we got that, we know that x plus 3 is a factor, which means if we set it equal to 0 and solve for x, we would get negative 3. So we're going to do this with negative 3. So we always bring this down first, and then we're going to multiply up, add down. So negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. We will add down, so 5 plus negative 3 is 2. Multiply up, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Add these down, so 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Multiply up, so negative 3 times negative 6 gives us 18. And then we'll add down, so negative 18 plus 18 gives us 0. Remember, this is the remainder term, this is the constant term, this is the x term, this is the x squared term. Again, if we had more terms here, it would go x to the 4, x to the 3, x to the 4, x to the 5, so on and so forth. But we don't have those. So our answer then is x squared plus 2x minus 6. And if you wanted, you could check this by doing x squared plus 2x minus 6 times x plus 3. And you would want to check and make sure that this, when you multiply this out, is equal to that, which I promise you it is. But you could check that if you wanted to. All right, let's look at one last example. Okay, so x to the 5th minus 5x to the 4th plus 6x cubed plus 5x minus 20. We're going to divide by x minus 3. So we'll take these coefficients here. Actually, the coefficient's negative 5 there. And we'll write them down. So we have 1x to the 5th, negative 5x to the 4th, 6x cubed, 0 x squared. So we don't have any x squared, so we have to put that 0 there. 5x and then negative 20. And if x minus 3 is a factor, then we're going to check when x is 3 here. All right, so we're going to bring the 1 down, and then we multiply up and then add down. So 3 times 1 is 3. Negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 6 plus negative 6 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 5 plus 0 is 5. And then 3 times 5 is 15. And negative 20 plus 15 is negative 5. So this one's a little different from the ones that we've had, but that's okay. So this is going to be our remainder term. This will be our constant term. This is our x squared, x cubed, and x to the 4th. So our answer here is going to be 1x to the 4th. I'm just going to write x to the 4th minus 2x cubed plus 0x squared plus 0x. You can write those, but I'm not going to write them. Plus 5. And then we have a remainder of negative 5. So some people will put remainder of negative 5, which is okay. But what most people will write is they'll say x to the 4th minus 2x cubed plus 5. And then what they'll do is they'll put minus 5 over the original thing that you were dividing by, which in our case we were dividing by x minus 3. So we'll divide here by x minus 3. And this is what most mathematicians agree on as the way to write that answer.